right, greetings. I have returned as promised, as spoken of in days of old. I want to continue kind of what we were doing yesterday, and I also remembered I totally forgot to generate a Lore24 prompt. So somebody remind me at the end to do our Lore24 prompt, lest I forget again, because I will forget. Um, I posted this in various spots yesterday. I kind of just did this last night. Sometimes it's good to kind of get a what would I call this? A not quite a wireframe, but a sort of a prototype of what the kind of thing that I'm aiming to do, what it would look like, more or less. Obviously, this is kind of sloppy, and there's some symbology and stuff here, but I'll kind of go through it because I think we'll probably this is kind of maybe will be I don't want to say the groundwork, but something like this is sort of where I'm going with this kind of system. This is not to say that this would replace a hand drawn to scale map. Certainly, if it was just for my home game, I mean, for myself, this might do it. And I might have this. I could then look at the room numbers or find these. And certainly for a structure this small, I could just have some headings on another uh, document or facing page, if you will, that could have things like what does the entrance look like? What does the grand gallery look like? Which I spelled wrong. Um, all these different things, right? Or you could take these boxes and you could make them roughly the shape of the room. That could be something that you could do too. Like there's many different ways. But from if I wanted to look at a dungeon conceptually, and like I said, I think for some usage, at least for me, this might be all I need. I know some things about this is a manor house. I'll have some overall characteristics or of what the where and what this manor house is. Oh, and as Terrence pointed out, happy Valentine's Day. I don't, my wife and I, we don't actually do Valentine's Day on Valentine's Day. And I don't know, this might be different in different places, but in New York City, they tend to have all kinds of specials. But we always find that the specials they're not designed to be special to the couple. They're designed to be, I think, easy to do for restaurants who are, theoretically, hopefully filling up, right? So they tend to be, these kinds of fixed menus or other sorts of things that we're not particularly interested in. So we usually try to do something at a later date. So actually, we're going out on Saturday. My daughter, as kind of a Christmas gift from her auntie, is going to stay over at their place Saturday night and then go on some fun activity. So we're going to take that occasion to go out, and that will be our Valentine's Day. I did get flowers though, so there are flowers, some Valentine flowers in the house. But yes, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. So going back to this, so for my purposes, this something like this might be all I would really need, in which I have the overall information about the house. It's brick, it's this, that, and the other one. If this was more than one level, I could probably do things like have, oh, here are stairs, here's stairs up, stairs down, whatever. I could maybe box these up in second floors. It's just assuming at this point that this structure is really one level, but that we can do that. These connectors are not necessarily meant to be show length. They're really just showing the connections. And maybe even ideally, I might give some of these names, like maybe all these dashed lines. I think I had in here as kind of like servants' halls, things like that, right? Where the servants are kind of coming, except for this one up here. And then I have this key. One of the things I was running up last night thinking about is access. So I started to make this list, right? So the primary use, or the first use, I should say, right? The first purpose of any structure is shelter. That's why you're doing it. You I'll leave it dungeons. You want to get out of the rain, you want to get out of the cold, you want to get some potentially some form of maybe of protection, but actually that's going to be kind of this. I think it's a secondary purpose. The first purpose is just to get, it's not just humans, right? Animals, everybody at some point wants to get out of the elements, You want to get out of the elements, so shelter is your first thing. And so you a tent or something, you're bringing your shelter with you, or you're trying to find somewhere. You're caught out in somewhere out in the wilderness and it's raining. You're going to try to find something to get over your head, something to get dry, whether it's underneath a big tree, but better yet, a cave of some sort. If you can, you might build a lean-to or something, right? But your shelter, that's number one. But then I would say, second to that is the safety factor. Okay, a tent, and look, this is baked into the game, right? What does the party do? We make camp. Okay, what is the next thing that either the GM is going to ask you, the referee is going to ask, or that the party, if they're kind of thinking is going to do, is like, okay, what is our watch order, right? Because the tent itself and the fire, whatever this, isn't enough. I mean, it is enough for that first part, and we would love a world in which we could just rest out in the wilderness and not have to worry about some horrible creature creeping up on us. But that's not the case. So yeah, first we have this thing, this structure. In our case, we're talking about dungeons, but that the second purpose is safety. Now maybe animals probably just stop here. Like this first order probably is the end of it. I know there's things like, oh, like was it clownfish who will become friendly with sea anemones and they develop something so they can live inside the sea anemones and they get some of the safety, get shelter, right? But that's not even really thinking. I mean, they're not consciously doing that. But I think that secondary, that second order, second purpose is, at least for sapient creatures, is going to be, okay, we got this shelter, we got to make it safe, or we have it. And I think this point often gets kind of, doesn't necessarily, it gets, I don't want to say confused, it gets short shrift a little bit often in our designs, because a lot of times dungeons, the way they're laid out, don't make a whole lot of sense for the inhabitants, the ones who are sapient, in terms of safety, because they don't tend to want to uh control or create safety. They just kind of, it's just kind of there. Right, yo, we're in the hobgoblin part of the caves now. Okay, the hobgoblins don't, what's how are they what are they trying to do to engage with their own safety? Seems like often the answer is not much. It's either a wandering creature, or you end up in a room, and in that room description is there are 8 hobgoblins here, and that's about it. But outside of those rooms, and outside of the wandering creature, which to me is not, unless you're trying to model sort of patrols in there, then they're not really doing anything to prevent you just kind of waltzing around. Yeah, they're maybe preventing you if you come into the room, but they're not. Oh, yeah, just waltz around these hallways all you want, and they just don't come into that room because that's where we're hanging out. Doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. Now, there's probably some gaming, the fact that it's a game, the fact that if they did set it up the way you want to, that no one would want to go into dungeons. Maybe that's all true. I mean, I think that stuff's interesting. I think that's where you get some of the Tucker's kobold stuff, is really about, like, well, what if these creatures took seriously the idea of, this is our place and we're not just going to let you wander around it. That's kind of what I feel like at its core, what the Tucker's kobolds thing is. And you can look up Tucker's kobolds, but they were just really, just were played as being clever. But part of that, sure, it's clever, but the other part is that, they're kind of treating the space. Yeah, I think the idea with the Tucker's kobolds might not have been his idea, but I think really the frame there is that this is their property, and they're going to go all home alone on you to try to keep you from stealing from them, killing them, whatever. So they're going to do that. And so, what kind of things can they do, given the vast roster of fun kind of implements and materials and things that are available to us in kind of ye old medieval fantasy campaign? They, you know, they can do that. Um, Terrence says, not putting in a place for waste disposal and occupied dungeons, really missing out on some potential gross fun. Yes, I do like to have midden pits and things like that. And I think there's almost always in a dungeon of mine, you'll find some kind of refuse pit. And usually I don't know, I tend to go with the kind of giant centipedes or giant rats or something that kind of live in there. If you get if they're clever, maybe they can get a gelatinous cube down there, and that can kind of be a waste disposal sort of thing, right? There's all kinds of fun stuff. But I guess my ultimate point is, yeah, there's a bunch of things we can look at and say these are necessities. But I feel like the biggest necessity over once you get past the shelter part, which is we're in a structure because it gives us shelter, is the second necessity that oftentimes weirdly is is not necessarily taken or is done in a weird way is that safety part, which really should be after the shelter part. That should be, you would think, that is number one on the list. If you were in a situation, I imagine, in which you had to either you were forced or whatever go into some giant cave complex, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, there's only five of us, so we're gonna take this corner that we've mapped out, and then you think, well, we got there's a whole bunch more of these caves that are kind of beyond us. We don't see them. We don't. We haven't checked it out, right? What are you going to do? You're going to deal with that. You're not just going to leave it and just say, "Oh, well, this is ours," and go what you want. You're going to. Um, you're. Terrence says he had a player fail a save against fear and flee down a guard robe. I actually looked up guard robe instantly. Like, is I thought that was just like a closet, like a locked closet. Terrence is a guard robe something different, right? This is literally like where you put your 'cause I actually have that in my, Janelle J.K.'s Memorial Dungeon, a guard robe. Um, but you know what? I see, Terrence, because I remember looking, like, on Wikipedia, one of the it actually, at some point, it went from being like a closet kinda thing to being a toilet. So, yeah, okay, now I'm on the same wavelength. Um, so safety, okay, and this is so I'm trying to kind of going a long way around explaining what this primary access and secondary access is. So we go from all right, what is our first purpose? Shelter, animals, right? That's kind of the primary concern for animals. Sapient creatures are going to go to that next level, I presume, which is safety. So now, right? So how does a how does a creature how does a creature make their space safe? Before we get to the before and I'm trying to kind of just work this through my brain. So I don't I've been working it out, but feel free if I'm missing an angle, if I'm missing something, let me know because I'm not pretending that I've got this is not a TED talk. I'm not trying to I'm really trying to work this out as we go. How does a creature make their space safe? And the main thing I have is you controlling access. And see, here's where I'm getting to access, which are these sort of the transits, the transit networks in and out, right? Transit networks in and out of the space. That's what they're doing. How do you control access through the space? Well, we've got ultimately it's barriers, right? We set up barriers, and these barriers could be uh, guards. And I'm just saying, basically, very generically, guards, um, simply just obstacles, and we have traps. Would be the main, kind of the main. I think anyway, um, the main sort of ways. Can I really? This is. Oh, I gotta do this individually. If someone has another one, if there's someone's going on missing, that's it. So we have trying to go through this list, right? You go into a space, you claim the space, then you have to try to make the space safe for you and whatever you're doing. You're gonna create your vault in there, and you have to protect the vault. How do you protect the vault? You could set up barriers. If you're in some big cave network and you've got this one little corner, you're probably going to want to, if you know that, okay, going down that corridor, A corridor, B or A or whatever it is I'm just going to try to find a map here that might work. Um, that's, there's horrible things down there. Well, what might you do? you might block it off. That's something we could do, right? Okay, we're gonna take a cave, and yeah, we don't care what's down there. We have no, because remember, we as a creature or a family or some kind of larger cultural unit, we don't care about making it for the players for the party to come through. That's not our concern. Our concern is, yeah, we don't want anything to do with that spot down there. If we can't do that, if there's one entrance to the cave and we're sitting right in that entrance, probably not the place you want to be because that's kind of like a highway going in and out. So maybe you don't set up right there because you look and say, yeah, this is right. It's like putting your camping site on a game trail. Not a good idea because you don't know what predator is going to come walking down that game trail and walk right into your camp, right? You would want to put it away. So that's part of this gets into picking your space, obviously. But once you have that space made, that space picked, and given whatever variables, if it's a structure you're building yourself, certainly you can build that in. If it's some structure you're not, then you're not. But this concept of the barriers comes back to this two alternate paths here. So we talked yesterday, we replaced goal with the vault. That is kind of the important thing. This would be where you enter this space or part of a space. In this case, it was, oh, hey, you can kind of, two paths you can go by. Number one is, and I think one of the examples, it wasn't the only one, was take on a bunch of monsters, right? Down one path, that is the combat option. That is where all the monsters are hanging out. If you want to go down that way, you're absolutely welcome to. Just know that you're going to be fighting monsters because that's where they all are. Or there's this other way. And the other way is traps. Yeah, there are no monsters down here, but there's all kinds of deadly traps. So when I was looking at this and thinking about it, really what you have is this really translates, or I attempted to translate it, remember, because I'm trying to find a more of a not a less gamey kind of way to look at it, but more of a like, what is this looking in the fiction? Like, and not in terms of the fact that it's a game. So, what the heck? But like, what would somebody build if they were going to do that? You probably wouldn't just build two hallways both going, and one of them's got all your troops if you were the evil necromancer or something, and then the other one's got all traps. Like, you wouldn't. Why would you do that? Probably wouldn't if that's kind of what it is. Like, oh, you enter a grand hallway. Door number one, you can hear all kinds of noises down. Oh, that's interesting. What does it sound like? Oh, it sounds like, people, kind of stepping heavily, and smells of body odor, and you can hear grumbling, mumbling, and maybe some talking. Okay, check the other door. Oh, it's quiet. Can we open it a smidge? Sure. You see in the hallway, you see skeletons pinned to the floor, the wall, the ceiling by all manner of contraption. Okay, right. Not going to do that. But when you change the slightly and you think about it and you say, um, what if instead of looking at it and saying, okay, I'm giving to oh, this is caves in the unknown. That might, or in search of the unknown, but that might not actually work for me. Instead of that, you might think, well, what happens? Would this work? Is this interesting? Um, I don't know if this worked for our purposes, but I'll leave it up here. Instead, you look at it and say, you might look at it and say, okay, we've got two access routes. One is the primary access. All right, what is that? The primary access is that is the sort of architected. If you think about when you plan it, when you're architect, you're planning the space. What is the path or the flow that you people are supposed to take? What you've designed for people to take. Think about any kind of building you go into on Earth, in our daily lives. You walk into a designed entryway, and you walk in, and it's supposed to give you a certain effect with a certain vibe, all that stuff, and then it has, access to different things. That's the flow you're supposed to go in, right? You're supposed to walk in the front door, say an office building, the big glass doors, and you come into the big, maybe it's an atrium, maybe it's some other kind of gallery or large space, and then depending on the building, but usually there's some kind of security desk and then some kind of access, some kind of maybe a turnstile or a key card entry or something that then gets you into say the elevator bays, or maybe you go up an escalator, right? All that stuff. But that's the way you're supposed to go. When they designed the building and the architect would walk you through it, they would say, here's what happens. You come in on the street, you start off in this little courtyard and you come in and this is how it works. That's your primary access. So in other words, it's the front door, so to speak. Okay. But in our world, it's necessitated by laws and regulations and all kinds of things, safety. You don't just have a primary access. You've got what I'm calling secondary access, or restricted is another word. I'm not quite sure which one I'm going to stick with. Restricted access. This is the back door, the the servants, corridors, the authorized personnel only type deal, right? Or in our world, emergency exits, or emergency exits. All these things. These are all these secondary ones. They're restricted. Under normal circumstances, you're not supposed to do that. You are not supposed to go to a building, and this is usually why, for these purposes, we know that, right? When usually you get to you're going in try to go through the fire exit, that there's those big stickers that say, hey, if you got into this fire, you go try to go in the outdoor of the fire exit, alarm's going to go off, all this stuff, because it's emergencies only. You're not supposed to go there, or it's locked up. Employees only. You're not allowed, or got to go through the turnstile with the key card and get validated before you're in. These are all these secondary or restricted access. That's what those are. And in a dungeon concept, dungeons are generally not concerned with things like fire hazards or certain things like that. But at the same time, I wager most places, if you have any chance, any choice at all, you're going to want to have some kind of exit, whether it's a fire escape, a back door, a trap door, something, right? You want to try to get out. I'm always a little bit frustrated by when the dungeons where they put the big bad guy at sort of the bottom of the end of the bottom level, and there's no way out. They're just in their throne room, and the only way out is the way the party clearly is coming in. So unless the guy can kind of get them turned around, he's stuck. My first thought is, why would you do that? You probably want to try to get out. Now there are probably some, I don't want to get into the sort of the different cultures around leadership. In some certain situations, yeah, the guy might want to run away. In other situations, no, it's he can't keep his position. It would be too big a loss of face and respect if he ran away, so he has to fight. I get all that, but just even if it's not something like that, even in some kind of act of God, natural disaster type thing, you generally want some other way out. Maybe if you're in a castle, they had all kinds of. So castles often had these kind of interesting ways that you could maybe try to wriggle out. Of course, if you end up in a siege, doesn't work so well oftentimes unless you've got some kind of like I forget, one of the castles that was kind of high on a cliff had some way of you could get out sort of down the cliff, and the cliff formed a barrier so you really couldn't siege around the whole thing. So that was kind of a neat escape route. But anyway, circumstances notwithstanding, you probably want some kind of back door. I don't know why you wouldn't have it if you could have it. That is that secondary restricted access. But again, it can also be servants' corridors, it could be your authorized personnel only, all that stuff. That's your secondary stuff. So it's still, in a sense, a legitimate access way. It's meant to be used as a network of transit, but it's not for everybody. This is, you're in normally, unless you're a good fella, you're not supposed to walk into the restaurant through the back entrance, through the kitchens and everything till you get to the dining room. That's just not how you do it. Unless you're a VIP or an employee, someone's going to stop you and say, "Hey, pal, you got to go around to the front door." Right? The back door going on that way, that's the restricted or secondary access. The front door is your primary access. And then I thought there was a third one, which I don't use in my drawing, but there's a third one, um, tertiary access, and those are the ones that are, I guess, non-conventional, unconventional, um, transit networks. Ugh, networks. We're talking maybe you have, and this is kind of, you're getting to really like if you want to treat your dungeons as sort of heistable spots. This is your sort of sewers, that sewer, sewer, I don't know, sewer pipes, your maybe even, you know, um, window access, wall, through the wall, like all the, I don't know, I don't even know how to put it, but just unconventional transit network used. Maybe that's a good way to put it. Like not designed to be traveled, but can be used as such potentially. I keep on spelling sewers, um, you know, etc. Right? Things like that. So we got these three types, and I think that thinking about these things. So one of the things I'm trying to do, or that keeping in mind, right, is that Jacasian concept is how do you you're in not just the loops, but people, because people will focus on the loops part. This definitely feeds into loops, but just making the place spaces feel more organic. Thinking about how people are going to be, or creatures, I should say, sapient creatures, how are going to be using these spaces. How can we kind of start thinking about the stuff maybe from the design element and maybe not later on? And or if we're given, let's say, a random dungeon, I don't think this map actually works that well for me. Given a random dungeon, how might we how might a creature come in and take that? If you were to go and generate, oh, I don't know, let's go to Dave's mapper. Where's no Dave's mapper? I think it's Dave's mapper, isn't it? Yeah. We go to Dave's mapper, right? We got something like this. We can say, okay, build us some caverns. I'm not gonna do any edits to it. So this one's kind of wackadoo. All right, maybe this is better. Kind of. This doesn't feel very caverny to me, but okay. So let's say we have this, which and sometimes it's really fun to me to take a random thing, especially when it's a cavern or some sort, because it forces you to think of a cavern as a space that maybe the party, or the creatures had limited abilities to really make it their own, right? They found this. Maybe they built some of the stuff in. Let me take some of these out. I think I can do that. There we go. Let's see. What's it says? Do not contain the right mix of tiles. Okay. Oh, maybe it wants open edge. All right. There we go. So maybe you end up something like this, and you think this is kind of neat. It's got these kind of elements, and we're just going to say that these creatures, whoever's living in here, doesn't have the time, resources, expertise to just totally craft their own things. So they're kind of using this more or less, but they can do some stuff. So what might they do? Right? Where, maybe they're the main egg entrances. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's through this thing. Well, this is great because this gives them some nice control. So maybe they'll put a barrier or two in here. All right. Well, then they'll maybe put a door, right? Put up a bunch of stuff, fill up the thing, put an actual door or gate around here, maybe at this narrow point. All right, that's grand. Okay, well, I'm not sure. This is a pool that leads down to this. Though, well, that's kind of good. I don't know if that it's enough. Maybe they could use this as an emergency exit. Probably it's just good for resources. Now we come into here. All right, this is nice. We have another kind of, I guess it's the same thing. We have this kind of area here, but you know what? But this going off into parts unknown, and we're not. They don't need that. They don't want that. So look, if it's a really narrow point, why don't we just fill this thing up. We don't want to, because here's the thing, right? So coming back to where's my thing. So when you want to control, how do you control access? Right. Okay. We can set up barriers. These could be guards, obstacles, traps. Maybe there's another option. Obstacles are just essentially filling it up. But it's an obstacle is what differentiates an obstacle from a trap is there's no attempt to entrap anyway. There's no attempt to inflict anything on the person or punish them for looking at it or coming up to it. You're just blocking their process, blocking their progress. That's it. It's a wall. Can't What are you gonna do with the wall? Can't do anything. Got to turn around. A trap can be a couple of things, right? We can be a deterrent, and this is where deterrent, no, deterrent. This is the deterrent. Oops, I guess I must have spelled that wrong. How do you spell deterrent? Oh, two R's. All right. The deterrent aspect, if you're a fan of the visible traps, that's using the trap as a deterrent because most creatures, most sapient creatures, if they were to see a 10-foot pit that's open, if they're intent on getting across, they'll get across. There's not even a question of can they? Of course they can. It's it's more like you're setting up this, is it worth the trouble? Right? Is the trouble of going and depending on what you're showing them, getting the wood, putting the stuff together, let's say they had to get some planks of wood together and do all this and that and do that. And of course, are they going to be able to get all this stuff together before while not being observed or accosted or caught by a patrol, anything like that? Okay, that's the deterrent. This is the Sloman Shield. This property is protected by the Sloman Shield. Or, when you get the big stickers that say, hey, you're being recorded. And if you're really interested in coming in there, the recording's not, oh, I'm being recorded. If I'm just intent, like that's not a barrier. And great. I can see the cameras, very visible cameras. I will come back and do whatever it is to get in the blind side of the camera and spray some stuff in the camera or on the cover of the camera. Like, you'll, you will figure out a way. If you are really intent, the deterrence not going to stop you. But the idea is that you have a lot of people who they might be thinking about it, but then that's enough. And that's kind of what it's like. Ooh, if I didn't know the camera was there, I might be tempted to do some mischief. But I can see you got a camera there, so you know what? I can see that. Ooh, you're protected by the Sloman Shield. I'll go find someplace that's not protected by the Sloman Shield because I'm not all that. And then there's the trap, which is hidden. To be more of that, the protective element, right? It's not just there to deter. It's not just there to deter by its presence. It's there to deter by its functioning. Uh, which is I'm not sure what the word would be because I guess it would just be and maybe it's the same thing, right? Deterrent, like a visual deterrent, um, and a I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the word would be. A deterrent through action, a neutralizer, threat neutralizer. Maybe that's a good word. So on the one hand, you're just trying to deter. On the other hand, so why am I going through all this nonsense? Let me let me reset. So I drew this map yesterday. I just was trying to throw it. I wasn't using anything. I don't know how realistic it is. It really the realism of the structure. I mean, this is just a schematic kind of thing. There's no real structure attached. But all right, I'm making a manor house, a small manor house. And I'm thinking about, okay, in this kind of manor house, in my imagination at least, we've got, and again, using this as sort of an example, a proof of concept of sort of things we talked about yesterday. What are we doing here? Right. So we have the entrance. This is where you're supposed to come in. So I wanted to track a couple of flows. The first flow is this is if you were to come this visit the manor house, you've been invited for dinner. What is the kind of user flow you're expecting? You're going to come in, And then if you're just coming for a sort of state dinner kind of thing, you're gonna come in here, and then you're gonna go right back out. That's your flow. So that's kind of the design, and this circle is just, I don't put it in here, but this is the entrance. This is the actual getting in, the front door, which I forgot to mark on here. The front door. Okay, that's, and now we say, oh, well, what if you're here for winter court? Okay, or some overnight. You're here for a weekend. All right, so then you come in, come around here, maybe you come around here, and you do that over a couple days, and then you leave. That would be sort of a more advanced user flow. Now, if you were a good friend of the owner of the manor house, maybe you get to come in here, goof around here a little bit, come into their library or some other sort of a little bit more private thing, be in here, and then back out in there. That's your this is the kind of guest sort of user flow. This is what you're sort of architected to come in. Now, what if you work at the castle or in the manor house? You work in the manor house. They're going to come in the entrance. Or maybe there'll be a side entrance, but probably not. Right? You're going to come in. If you're a guard, maybe you slip out. You come in here. You sit in the guard room until you are summoned or something else happens. That's kind of your primary flow. What if you're a servant? You're a scullery maid. And I don't know the guards. I mean, I'm presuming the guards, I didn't put guard quarters, but there'd probably be guard quarters. They probably wouldn't even come through the entrance because they're already here. Servants. Okay, you're starting out here. You might probably go to the kitchen, might be your first thing. You're serving meals, you're coming in to the grand gallery, and then you're going back out, kind of back and forth, doing this over the dinner. And then when you're done, coming there, right? If you are maybe a sort of a butler factor, handmaid, whatever of the lord or his family, maybe you start here, you might come to the kitchen, and then you could duck into the library. Oh, we got to make their beds. We get to come in here and do this, come back out, right? Go through here, come to the kitchen, go on the thing. That's our access. But remember, these are all the sort of secondary passages. Now, I made this one a primary passage, this thing here, right? Because this is the primary way. When you're in the servants' quarters, this is kind of primary for them. But I could probably dash it out. I think I would probably in the future, I would probably dash that because it's primary for the players. Because I think maybe I was confusing myself, was kind of thinking what's primary for the occupants as well as from the party's perspective. But I think I'm going to keep it from the party's perspective, in which case that would be secondary. And of course, if you're guards, maybe you start here, you got to come up in the kitchen, maybe you got to come to the servants' quarters, right? You probably need to access all this stuff. Hey, Line Dove, thanks for joining. Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying the content. Welcome aboard. So these things here are an attempts by me, and this one doesn't have a tertiary flow, but it's something we could think about, right? What happens if they decide to get a second story man and climb up to the second floor and go in here? That would be kind of a tertiary passage. Or if this lake, pond, or whatever here, maybe there's some access into a well that's inside the house. I don't know if anyone would ever have a well inside their house, but if they did, maybe those would all be tertiary access networks if they existed, if that makes sense. And of course, then we have they need to escape. You got some escape tunnel coming out. So those are the pathways. These dash lines, the solid lines. Solid lines are what you are supposed to be going. And I think as a GM, this helps me one because I'll immediately kind of have an understanding of sort of what sorts of things they are. The primary ones are probably going to be made like in a building. They're going to be made to be viewed by outsiders. You're going to have, oh, beautiful archway over here, wonderful, maybe arched, I don't know, Gothic, whatever. Maybe there's tapestries and things like that, and of course, some beautiful oak door here, or whatever. What are these hallways going to be like? Probably not anything special, right? They're going to be the kind of minimum required thing: a bare wall, maybe some the bare amount of candles or lighting on the walls so you don't get lost, sort of thing. No windows to the outside, none of that stuff, right? That's another thing you can do to kind of help differentiate. And then I also have these kinds of doors, which also represent those same access points. So I did these squares for just these are your primary access points. This is what these are what where you're supposed to be going. These here. And then for secondary access, I use these triangles. Now they might not be hidden as in secret door hidden, but they might be obscured because you usually want that. You want maybe you have all kinds of art and stuff and tapestries and wallpaper on a painted walls, and then there's a door that kind of just is inset. It's not invisible. It's not really trying to be hidden in the sense if you can't find it. You look at it, you'll see the outline of a door, but it's kind of meant to just be sort of fade in because it's not meant to draw the eye away, right? You're not supposed to be, as a guest, you're not supposed to be concerned about these side doors. They're not for you. They're for the little peons who work here. They're not for you. So that's what these kind of triangles are. If you and you might not need to, but if you want to differentiate, like I think like I did, that like here's kind of a they're not hidden, but they're they might be more subtle, or they're not ornate. Again, it's a way for you or for me as the GM to think about those access points a little bit differently. If we want the guest to come in some main door where the symbol of the house is carved into some grand oak doors, well, what about this one going in the kitchen? It ain't that. It may be very simple. It may be close to being hidden, whatnot. And then when I wanted to say that something's actually hidden, I then circle it. So this access from, I just thought it'd be kind of fun because maybe there's a little, maybe you want to allow for some foolishness that there's some little hidden little hallway between the library and the guest quarters. So if somebody was given permission, they might be able to slip on over here, or maybe the lord of the house wants to do a little dirt, they can kind of go and slide on over into the guest quarters, right? Something like that. But they're going to keep that thing locked. They're not going to want unauthorized access, or rather, it's secret. That's something they're going to want to like. You press a panel, slips open. Think Clue, where they're finding all these little secret passages in there. That's kind of what that deal is. And of course, for the escape exit, that's probably they also want that to be hidden. They don't want someone to find themselves in the master bedroom and just see that there's another door there that's unaccounted for, kind of thing. And then not a lot I didn't have a lot of locked doors conceptually in this one, but I did think that at some point they might want to lock, if there's imagine that some hostile force came in here. What if you were something were going on in here? The family could get through here, lock these big heavy doors, and then while they're messing around there, they can then escape. Right. So to me, it kind of made sense in terms of again the flow. Like I'm trying to think about the flows. So now through this, if you're a party, what are you doing here? Maybe let's just assume you're not here on a social occasion, or maybe you have the social occasion is a uh, is just an excuse to be there, but you need to find somebody, do something. Maybe you need to find a servant, so you got to try to figure out how to get into the servants' quarters. You got multiple pathways because we definitely have, we have loops, or you got this loop. We've got you could come in through this way and come around. You could come through this way and then, back over. We got, you got kind of this loop. So you have options in terms of, and I could even add more if I wanted to have one from here that comes down to the entrance. Maybe there would be a similar one, or maybe not even a hidden one, but just a kind of a secondary door to provide access. That I didn't have a chance to really think about it so much, but you can see how, at least for me, thinking in this mode has me building out these kind of loops and these kind of things. Not because I'm thinking about loops. I didn't go into this thinking like, "Ooh, I gotta have a loop. I gotta have a loop here. And I gotta have a loop here." But I'm just trying to think of like, well, what is logically what makes sense? Here's another loop. It makes sense that you would have this kind of access. I know in different manor homes and mansions and things, they have servants' hallways and things. These places that only your servants are supposed to be going, and they're just scuttling around there because it's was seen as beneath you to have servants just walking around your main thing. That's not for them, so they got to scuttle off into some side passage. Well, Where do they need to scuttle off to? They're probably going to need to get into most of the main rooms because they're going to want to be cleaning them and doing stuff right here. So you go in the kitchen, you might need to come through here. Heck, we might even have another passage. And I even thought about it, like make come in here like this. Do that. But you start just thinking about, okay, well, great. Now I have this guard hub here where the guards are all hanging out. They're also going to need to have access to these different areas because they need to be able to get there potentially. Okay. I mean, the one place they can't get to is back here, but I did think about, and again, if I was gonna spend more time on it, because I maybe spend about 20 minutes on the drawing of it. So this is all very quickly done. There probably would be a secondary guard kind of unit here for your sort of house guard type things. And then, they would have access into probably some of these areas, right? Like that. And maybe even have a secondary servants' quarters that kind of gives the same. Um, I think Ian says, all the more opportunity to surround your players, pincer attack. Yes, there's always room for a pincer attack. So I'm not complete, right? This is kind of all still a work in progress, but I'm trying to work through these ideas. And I'm hoping by the end of it that I'll be able to essentially take what I've said now, kind of write it up in a slightly more concise, not rambly, repeating myself 800 times sort of thing, and maybe give an alternate method for folks to take a dungeon, either one that already exists if they're grabbing a Dyson Logos kind of thing, or like I did from Dave's Mapper, you're grabbing something and you want to think about like, oh, what do they do? How do these people do this thing? Um, what does this give us? I love Dave's Mapper, but I wish there was a way to preview some of these things because I don't have a good sense of which designs I like. Like this ones are good. If I close, can I close edge it? Yeah, so you end up with something like this, and even though they give you kind of the secret door bit, you can think about, well, which space would these creatures take, and then how would they alter those spaces to fit? So if we assume this is some kind of multi-layer dungeon, they don't own it all. Maybe this area would be you'd look and that's good, right? You've got secret access here. Maybe this was already built up. You have two access points. You could probably put doors or block one off entirely if you want to. I'd probably want to have both, though I have this rear access here, so maybe I block this one off, keep this one, or maybe I keep this one open and block this one, kind of thing, right? And you can think about, well, what are they doing, right? What are they trying to get done? What are they trying to do? And so we come back to this concept here, right? So this is probably the last thing that I'll do for the stream, and then I will do we'll generate our lore 24 prompt. But you only have limited resources. So one of the reasons why, right, if you think about it in a building, like an office building or a manor house or whatever else, you only have so many guards. So sure, you could station guards here. Yeah, that makes total sense. Maybe you'd like to station some guards here. That might make sense too. And then maybe some here if the Lord's landing here. Great. But what if how many people is that? And there's more things you can't have. You probably can't have patrols going everywhere. You probably can't you might not have the manpower. You probably don't have the manpower to have patrols out. Maybe there's some patrols around the grounds. And then so you're limited in your resources. So what do you do? This is something that we are, our own buildings have to deal with all the time. You have some tall office building. If you were going to sit there and some security consultant was going to say, all right, if you wanted to adequately protect this entire building, you would need, thousands of men, right? Men on every floor doing this or that. And you're like, don't, I can't afford, I can't afford that. So what do? You put in your traps. Hey, you know what? My neighbors here down the street, they can't afford to have a watchman watching the house. So they get the Sloman's shield. It's not necessarily as good as a person, but one, it might act as that deterrent. And then two, maybe they got some other element of it that will be, in that case, neutralize the threat. And just, I mean, for security, I guess you have to hope, right, that the Sloman's guard, someone steps up to the door, starts doing whatever, and by the time they're done doing whatever, and rummaging through your sock drawer, the cops have showed up and able to neutralize them. In terms of your normal traps, any kind of trap, a pit trap, what all that stuff doing, it's they are trying to neutralize the threat. And you're doing that because you can't afford guards. The other thing I think is interesting from a trap perspective, and Direct Sun says that now they're imagining a trapped office skyscrapers. I know people have done like, basically die hard the game, but that's kind of it, in a way. Um, the other thing I was thinking about with traps is like, okay, like, wouldn't you? Hey, why not trap the front door? Why not put traps here? And I know that sometimes in dungeons you'll see stuff like, oh, look, there's a trap right there, or right in the middle of there, or here. And I don't think that makes any sense. And the same reason why it doesn't make sense that you put alarms on the front doors of your office buildings for the most part, because it would cause more trouble than it's worth. You have enough people. If you have enough traffic coming in and out of here, then the chances that your own people are going to trigger your traps becomes higher than whatever effectiveness they're going to have against actual intruders. You put a trap in the middle of here, all your guests, your personnel, you are going to be falling all. You're gonna be open that stuff up. You're gonna forget. I don't care. You're gonna forget if your population is large enough, right? This becomes kind of a population thing. When you think of your resources, I should let's see. Oops. Oh no, I don't want that. I don't want either of those. Right? You got your resources. Whoops. No, not that. I don't know what I did. No. What are you doing, Ouija? Right. How much resources do you have to allot to safety? Well, I'm gonna just put security. How much have you got? If you have very low resources and you have a small population, traps make sense. If it's just me and my family or just me, then yeah, trap the heck out of the front door, right? Because I know for myself, I'll do it. And I guess woe on to me if I fall into my own trap. Yeah, trap that up. Manor house, it doesn't make any sense. You're gonna be pulling your own guys out of that stupid trap. 99 out of 100 times. You just are. But okay, putting a trap here or maybe somewhere else where you're thinking to yourself, the people coming into this hallway now, these remember we're in restricted that secondary access, secondary passage. We're now in the restricted area. In the restricted area, a trap makes a lot more sense because you're only supposed to be authorized personnel only. The amount of people walking down this corridor, this thing should never be very much. Again, here it might seem like more because I have coming from the kind of the kitchen, but there's probably, there might even be another kitchen or another servants' quarters. But this is where your right trust level, you're inside the circle of trust. So having some kind of trap, presumably that either you can get around or disarm momentarily, like if there's a switch or a key, or you come up to the certain candle on the wall that's not lit and you turn it counterclockwise and you turn it back. Anything like that is going to make a lot more sense because your access is limited. You're not a people that you have to keep track of. Knowing this is limited, and this is where you can't like you can potentially you can think of and say, I can have a patrol of guards that can kind of take care of this. Or maybe say, maybe at least this part, right? This area here. And really, if you think about it, you might even say, I don't even need the guest quarters. If there's, that might be situational. I can always lock this door if there's nobody staying with me, whatever. So you can say that maybe on a day-to-day basis when we're by ourselves, this is where I need to have my presence because I want to show them as a deterrent and they can also neutralize threats, which I guess works for guards too, right? Your your guards are your deterrent and they're your threat neutralizer. Deterrent in that you see the guards, right? Why do you see a bunch of guys hanging out by the front door? is to show you like that is the Sloman Shield sticker sign. Don't come over here. We got men at the door. Okay. But at the same time, you're like, you think to yourself, I don't have the people to really be patrolling the rest of this stuff adequately. This, these parts, for the most part, are probably beyond what we could patrol reasonably, not without weakening our other things. So now what might we do? Put some traps. And we don't care about deterrence because the guards are a deterrent and you know better. You're in somebody's home. At this point, this is not about the skull on the pole saying beware. You're in somebody's home. We've got things that. So now you're down to threat neutralizing. You can't afford to put guards everywhere as much as you might like to. So you put your traps. Put your traps. So I go through this kind of exercise to kind of demonstrate at least how I envision this process could work to help both kind of lay out some spaces, at least conceptually, end up doing some looping, even though you're not really thinking about it as looping. You're just kind of thinking about how do different people access, either they create the space, the structure, and how they want to configure access, right? What is the vault? What is the goal? What are we trying to do? You have a manor house, the vault, that's where your people are sleeping. You have other secondary needs like your cultural needs. You're going to need servants, you're going to need guards, and then you start thinking, connecting. You're going to need places to put guests, and you start thinking about how these places connect. Who needs to get where? Your guests need to are going to want to follow that primary flow, that primary access path. That's their thing, right? That's what they need to do. Then guards and other folks are going to have secondary flow. And then you think about it and say, okay, well, the main part of stuff is going to be are going to guard that primary flow where we expect people to go. We're going to put our guards there. We're going to show strength. We're going to show that deterrence. And then we can't guard all those servants' passages. I mean, we can hope that a servant will see somebody, see something, say something kind of deal. But apart from that, what we can do is then we can use traps. So I think in this scenario, if you're the party and you run into it, it might be a little bit more like, okay, we're in the spot, we're not. Not to say that you can't flip the script and stuff, right? But in a living space, sometimes I think we just throw a trap there because it's like, ooh, this is the perfect place for a trap. Why? Because the people living there would actually put a trap there? No, because we can kind of fool the party or put in kind of a clever spot from that standpoint. Hey, Olivia, how are you? Whew. All right. Does that make sense? Please let me know in the comments and things if what I'm saying is making any sense at all. It's a work in progress, like I mentioned, but I feel like I'm on the right path. The thing is, can I get it written out in a concise way and kind of do it quickly? I'm trying to get this done. Um, stat, so to speak. Um, so that's that. Okay. Before we go, nope, that's the wrong document. Hold on a second. I was trying to pull up one thing and I got the wrong thing. Where is it? Do I need to? No, let me see. I think I need to pull it up. Ian says it's good. Mapping exercise way easier than trying to draw a map as a map. Yeah, that was kind of my thought. No, HP, I'm not. That's kind of part of it because I think once you get this part down, then the shapes and things become a lot easier. Like you can shape this stuff however you want. But I always really like labeling things. I like to be able to think like, oh, this is the entrance. Here's the hall or the grand gallery. I call it there, whatever. Like, and then yeah, like this guest quarters isn't, and I don't say mean it's one room precisely, and all your guests sleep in bunks in a giant room, but you can then map that out. This becomes a little precinct, which you can kind of map out. Same thing with the kind of master suite can be the same thing, right? But you just kind of block it out because oftentimes the shapes they can be interesting or maybe not interesting, but not really the most important thing that you need. I think because I feel like once you nail down the purposes of things, then I think this stuff makes then I think it makes the kind of the drawing of the physical shape easier. Uh, yeah, and to your point, Ian, as you said, I think you could certainly play it as a table with nothing but this kind of schematic style floor plan. Where did my dice go? Hold on a minute. Gotta find my dice. Gotta find dice here. Did I not pull out my dice since last Thursday? Is that what we're saying? That what I'm saying here? Oh, dice, 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 dice. All right. Yeah, because drawing pretty maps is fun and I love it, but it's also something that can be its own barrier to actually getting stuff done. Is the like, oh, I can't draw as good a map as Dyson can or somebody else can. So, am I doomed? No, you're not doomed. You're not doomed at all. If you really don't want to draw it and you feel like trying to draw it out is just going to make you feel self-conscious, then don't. Just draw kind of a mind map of it and just write out what your detailings are. Oh, it's a shape, it's a room that's in an L shape and, this whatever, right? You can describe it out if that works better or just draw it and just draw the generic shape. Don't even have to use the squiggly lines if it's natural. Just say, oh, it's an L-shaped cave. Okay, got it, right? The walls are rough. All right, great. That tells me everything I need to know. All the other stuff, it's kind of gravy. Where are the positions of the doors and if whatever, that's helpful, useful. But other than that, it's, not to say not to do it, but don't need to. Okay, here we go. So sorry this is late, but between what happened on Monday? Something happened on Monday? Did I just not stream? I streamed yesterday. Did I? I think I just couldn't. I think I had. Oh no, I had to go to the vet. I had to take my cat to the vet on Monday, and then yesterday I meant to do this and I just forgot. So now it's the middle of the week, but I didn't forget today. So if you're wondering what we're doing here, I do a Lore24 kind of community sort of challenges just for fun. I'm actually a couple weeks behind in my challenge prompts. So if you want to just use it for your own inspiration, that's great. If you're doing Lore24 and you want to use it, that's also great. People post, some folks, myself included, are posting kind of Lore24 updates on my forums.hext.press if you want to participate. But if you don't, no worries. So here I'm just going to do this week's. So first of all, I'm going to roll. Actually, not on this. I'm going to roll on this one. No wait, yeah, this one first. So I'm going to roll a category and I got 5. So the category is a plot. And now we're going to look at what kind of plot it is because I have a plot table, right? Yep. I don't think we've got a plot before. 2, it's a theft. So it is a plot, which is a theft. And then I come back. So this basically the second page kind of gives us if we want because I started off with just one page. Just gave a subject, a color, and a descriptor. So you get stuff like, oh, the cobalt isolated conspiracy, which can be cool. But then I was thinking, well, maybe you want a little bit more structure to that. And that's why I kind of added these other tables to give you some more prompts. So now, having gotten sort of our general theme of what's happening, now we can roll for the substance of it. I'm going to use this green and blue die. Green will be 10s. Wow, 66. High priest or priestess, your choice. Number 1, number 2 for the color. 13. We get obsidian. Gotta love obsidian. Obsidian. Let's see. Sorry. Okay, got that written. And then finally, 36. Hey, RPG Grandma. I'm just closing. I'm actually about to close up shop, but I needed to get my Lore24 community prompt done. So 36 gives us, what is that? Brutal. I think I've gotten brutal before, but that's fine. So here we go. So if you want to take advantage or if you want to participate or just use this for your own devices, the theme is a plot that is a theft. And then however you want to use it involving a high priestess, obsidian, and brutal. Direct says Indian food and cereal for the working man. That's an interesting. I didn't even mention I got some blood orange spinger for the working man. Yeah, for me, as it was about just past 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I'm kind of smack dab in between lunch and dinner. I just had some eggs for lunch. I kind of wanted to get uh, chicken over rice for lunch, but I know I'm gonna go out because I go into Manhattan for my physical in person game night where I'm a player, and it just necessitates that I get dinner, I get something out. So I usually know that I'll be buying out tomorrow. So I felt like, you know what, I won't go out and get somebody to buy today because I'm gonna be eating out tomorrow. So I made some eggs, which are good. I'm getting better. I feel like my scrambled eggs are pretty good. I like a lot of different eggs now. I grew up, I didn't like any eggs but scrambled. Or there was a while I didn't like any eggs at all. Then it was scrambled eggs, and I've ramped up the different kinds of eggs I like. But there's still, I still have a soft spot for a good scrambled egg, and I'm getting better at it. But I have to re-season my pan because I have some nice kind of cast iron or what's the carbon pans. But I find that I need to fix the seasoning. Yes, RBG Grandma says it's a crazy Valentine's Day. Avoid restaurants. Yes, that's so. Yeah, first of all, for folks who are joining late, I said it. Well, Terrence actually prompted me at the beginning. So I hadn't thought about Happy Valentine's Day, and yeah, like me and my wife, we do not celebrate Valentine's Day on Valentine's Day for that very reason. RPG Grandma pointed out in the chat because restaurants are crazy. They tend to offer kind of dumbed down sort of menus. It's just a hassle to get in there. It's crowded. Like everyone's going out to eat, right? So we save it. So we're gonna go to get a. I got a reservation at a place I hadn't been to before an omakase sushi tasting menu on Saturday. So that'll be kind of fun. So we get to drop off my daughter, who's going to spend the night with her aunties, and then we're going to go get some sushi. So that'll be good. Oh, RPG Grandma's anniversary tomorrow. Well, happy anniversary in advance, RPG Grandma. That's great. But yeah, happy Valentine's Day to all. Um, I'm really trying to get this dungeoneering bit done ASAP. I know that's kind of what's the what's the word I'm thinking of, right? Famous last words, I guess is the phrase that comes to mind. So if you know, I mean, I always look at first. I always, you can't think about any kind of creative endeavor. You can't really worry about other folks too much because you just can't. I can't see in their brains, right? I can give you what I do, what I think is helpful, and this is kind of the same thing for me, right? I hope that I find this even doing this last night when I was kind of coming up with some of the stuff as I was because some of the symbology and stuff I was really coming up with as I was mapping it, so I can hopefully get a pretty good map. Oh, and Brian Smith on the forums asked what these HD figures are. I kind of forgot all about it, but that is concept of measuring difficulty. So you take the classic dungeon and you say, oh, it's we're on level one of the dungeon, which corresponds to basically level of the party. That's kind of what this is. But my idea was to decouple it from the level concept. So, for example, here entrance would be equivalent to your level one of a dungeon. So the grand gallery, so the guest quarters, but then the guard room is actually would correspond to basically level three back to level one, and then level two and level two up here. And this way you can have different areas and you can extend this all the way down. If I want this door to be kind of a tougher door, even though it's an HD1 room, I can say this door is basically difficulty 3 if I want it to be, right? So it's like super hard because they've warded the door. So attempts to pick the lock or whatever the mechanism is super difficult because of these magic wards. Or then I would say, okay, this is an HD3 door. It stands for what do they call it? Like hazard difficulty. I think HD. I'm going with the HD shtick. So if you're familiar with Monster HDs, you see this. Even you're not sure exactly what I'm saying, it's the same thing, right? So I was giving these all HD values. So if you're wondering what those are, that's what those are. RBG Grandma says we'll probably wait till the weekend for a fancy celebration. I think that's a good call because yeah, today I don't know if people do tomorrow too, but um, you know, I think waiting. I think if you can wait for the Valentine's Day, I mean it's hard, right? Because people it was kind of my wife's idea when we first were dating and stuff. It's like, hey, let's avoid Valentine's Day because it's a pain in the arse. And I was like, that's a really good idea. I don't know. I don't. It'd be interesting. I don't know in other circumstances. I mean, once and we've been together now for a long time, so it's a different sort of holiday now than it used to be. Um, but everyone go out there and enjoy it in some way. I went out and got flowers early this morning, so that was kind of my thing that I did on Valentine's Day. Let's see. RBG Grandma says you can only project so far out because players are always doing crazy stuff. That's true. And if you make it more funneled encounters, and everyone now is all railroad. Yeah, I think the thing is, I think with the railroad bit, as much as it gets talked about, I think oftentimes it's really if you have a good bead. I mean, I'm not someone who's saying go railroad your players, right? But at the same time, I can admit, I can see that if your railroad is going where they wanna go, then no one's gonna know or care, right? It's the friction comes when your railroad as a GM is clearly diverging from what the players wanna do. If you've got a good beat on your party, I think sometimes when you've been playing for the same group for a while, you kinda know what they're gonna do. I'm sure people get a sense of, "All right, Todd's gonna wanna do this. Like, this is gonna happen. If this happens, Todd is gonna be out to do this other thing." And then you kinda plan sort of railroad in that direction. I think it's probably fine because 'cause I'm not gonna notice it because in the moment, I'm gonna get, "Yeah, I'm gonna go do that thing," and then the GM goes, "Aha, I knew it." But it's when, when you don't have that feel and you're just kinda pushing anyway, and you're not flexible so that when you realize, "Oh, geez, I planned wrong," you're unwilling to be flexible and be like, "Okay, I'll do this other thing." Then you get into that kind of, I guess, the more negative aspects of railroading. But, that's a whole discussion for another day. Anyhow, folks, I've been doing this long enough. I know some folks seem to have joined in late, so please go back to the beginning. I think we talked about some really excellent stuff. I think it'll give you an idea of what I'm working on. If you saw me post this, I kind of go through this, so you will see that. There will be more to come. I'd love to say that I'll have this done by the weekend. I feel like every time I make a promise like that, then it's like 3 months later, I'm still working on it. But I really am trying to get this done because I feel like I'm finally, maybe I just got my brain working in 2024, but I have things I want to do, and I need to get these kind of groundworks, these foundations set before I can do the things I really want to do. And I'm just determined to finally get it done. So fingers crossed. Um, Let me know if how it seems to you, because I don't want to design something just for me, but I do think that if I design it for me, then there are other folks who kind of think the way I do who will find it useful. And then, of course, people can, once this stuff gets out in the world, people can do with it what they will. Anyhow, have a great Valentine's Day. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I will talk to you later. Bye now.